We had this conversation in a spirit of absolute mutual respect and tolerance. There was not a scintilla of bigotry in my mind. And this guy was the nicest guy in the world, right? So I've been back to the restaurant since, hugged him. There's absolutely nothing hostile about my orientation toward individual people who happen to be Muslim. Now, given the requisite beliefs on their part, the hostility will be inevitable. If I'm in the presence of a Muslim who thinks that infidels are the scum of the earth, we're not going to be hugging each other. But the idea that somehow my criticism of concepts leads me to hate people is just, there's no point of contact between that and my actual psychology. And I'm sure this is true of Richard Dawkins, and it was true of Hitch, and it's true of Lawrence Krauss, and every other prominent atheist who unfortunately has to waste a fair amount of his or her life criticizing the terrible ideas of religion. Not to put too fine a point on this, but the psychological reality of being a so-called militant atheist seems to be so difficult for our critics to imagine that I feel like I need to give another example. So I'm writing this book with Maajid Nawaz, who I've mentioned before on this podcast. No doubt many of you are aware of who he is, but he's a former Islamist, now a Muslim reformer, brilliant, interesting, indispensable, who I now consider a friend. He wasn't a friend before this collaboration because we didn't know each other, but now I consider him a friend and actually a personal hero. He's an immensely courageous man. So he and I are collaborating on this book, the title of which is Islam and the Future of Tolerance. And as you'll see in this book, much of it has the character of a debate where I am pushing somewhat hard on specific ideas within Islam, and he is telling me how these ideas are susceptible to more benign interpretation so as to move Islam forward into the 21st century. But the crucial point is I don't have to censor myself on the topic of Islam to have this conversation. Maajid knows exactly what I think about Islam and concepts like jihad and martyrdom and apostasy. He knows exactly what I think about the treatment of women throughout the Muslim world. There is no contradiction between having a civil but nonetheless hard-hitting and searching conversation about a very important, even inflammatory topic, and having a positive ethical orientation toward the person you're arguing with. I actually said something to this effect in a recent Washington Post article, and Glenn Greenwald linked to this on Twitter, saying that Sam Harris wants us to know that he has a Muslim friend. So he's accusing me of using the "some of my best friends are black" defense. And he also branded Maajid as a critic of Islam, dismissing him as a mere critic of Islam, and therefore, of course, he's the kind of Muslim I would associate with. So he treats Maajid like an Uncle Tom. And please remember, this is coming from a gay Jew living safely outside the Muslim world who would be hurled from a rooftop any place within it. Now, perhaps the most charitable interpretation I can give to this behavior is that people like Greenwald and Aslan think that my criticism of Islam and the criticism of the new atheists generally is so easily misunderstood by mentally unbalanced or racist or xenophobic people that it's dangerous. It's dangerous to focus on Islam because bad people will misinterpret the significance of this focus and commit murders of the sort we just witnessed in North Carolina. Now, let me concede it's certainly possible that the murders in North Carolina were a hate crime. It could be that when Hicks starts talking, he'll tell us how much he hates Muslims and he just wanted to kill a few. And he might even say he read The God Delusion and The End of Faith and God is Not Great and took from these books some kind of rationale to victimize Muslims at random. I think it is incredibly unlikely that that's the case. I will be flabbergasted if Hicks says that his atheism drove him to commit these murders, whereas the next jihadist will almost certainly say that his religion mandated that he behave the way he did. But perhaps people like Greenwald and Aslan think that criticizing Islam is just dangerous because it can be misunderstood by bad people. Well, by that standard, we can't criticize anything. This, as Ali Rizvi pointed out, This would be like saying, we can't criticize U.S. foreign policy because some number of people overseas will become so agitated by this criticism, by reading Noam Chomsky or Glenn Greenwald, that they will then kill U.S. tourists at random. Is that possible? Sure, it's possible. But we have to be able to criticize U.S. foreign policy. And some of what people like Chomsky and Greenwald write about U.S. foreign policy is correct. Should they be held responsible if some deranged person takes their writing and uses it as a basis for intolerance or even murder? No, of course not. And the same can be said for any criticism of the doctrine of Islam. And I want to make one thing very clear. In saying or writing or otherwise publishing the opinion that I have blood on my hands, and then backing that up with conscious misrepresentations of my views about Islam, that is a dangerous thing to do. It's dangerous for me. It's not dangerous for Greenwald and Aslan, and they know it, but it is dangerous for me. It increases the risk to me and my family from religious lunatics in the Muslim community. Now, both Aslan and Greenwald know that some number of people among their readers are proper lunatics, the goons and madmen who are organized entirely around this variable of Islam and its importance to their lives and to the future of humanity. And if you tell them, as Greenwald and Aslan repeatedly have, whether in their own words or by circulating the lies of others, that I want to nuke the Muslim world, or that I want to round Muslims up for torture, or that I'm a genocidal fascist maniac, or that I want to profile dark-skinned people at airports, or that I want to kill people for thought crimes, or that I have blood on my hands for the murders of 3 beautiful young people in North Carolina. This is dangerous, and I've asked them to stop it, and I'm asking them to stop it again. I'm about to release a book on Islam with Maajid Nawaz. Maajid has serious security concerns. He is my co-author, telling millions of people that I have incited hatred against Muslims that led to the deaths of these poor people in North Carolina is totally unethical. Aslan and Greenwald are mendacious bullies. They're making it unsafe to criticize bad ideas that absolutely have to be criticized. There is no view that I have ever published that I am hiding from. I've written about torture and profiling, but none of my views reduce to anything that could be the basis of hatred of whole groups of people. And it's very difficult. It may in fact be impossible to counter these lies once they are in circulation. I mean, just as I was making this podcast in the last few hours, there was an incident in Denmark where a meeting about these issues, about free speech and blasphemy and the drawing of cartoons, was attacked by a terrorist. And one person died and several people were injured, and then this terrorist went on to kill someone at a synagogue. In fact, you can hear the audio on the BBC website. Actually, I'll play it for you. This is what it's like for peaceful people to gather in a cafe and attempt to have a conversation on these issues in an open society.
I realized that every time we talk about activity of those people, there will be always, yes, it is freedom of speech, but. And the turning point is but. Why do we still say but when we...
You have to ask yourself, what kind of world do you want to live in? What kind of world do you want your kids to live in? This is the world you're living in now. And as someone who is spending a fair amount of time dealing with these issues, I can tell you that I no longer feel safe doing so. And apart from jihadists themselves, there is no one I know of who's making this job less safe than people like Glenn Greenwald and Reza Aslan. And not just for me, obviously, but I'm talking about those people in Copenhagen. I'm talking about people in open societies everywhere who have to deal with this growing menace of jihadism. Unless we can speak honestly about this, unless we can resist the theocratic demands being placed on us, we will lose our way of life. In fact, we have already lost it in many respects. We have to reclaim our freedom of speech. So if you care about living in an open society that doesn't more and more resemble Jerusalem or Beirut, if you care about free speech, real freedom of speech, not merely its political guarantee, but the reality of being able to speak about what you need to speak about in public without being murdered by some maniac, or without having to spend the rest of your life being hunted by a religious mob. If you care about my work or the work of other secularists and atheists, or that of Muslim reformers like Maajid Nawaz, or apostates like Ayaan Hirsi Ali, if you care about our ability to notice and criticize and correct for bad ideas, then you have to condemn this behavior. You have to condemn the deliberate manufacture of lies designed to make it unsafe to have honest conversations. So please push back against this. Please lose your patience for shocking displays of intellectual dishonesty on the part of people like Glenn Greenwald and Reza Aslan, and all the other commentators who obfuscate the plain reality of religious fanaticism. Your response to this really matters. The things you do on your own blogs and on social media and in comment threads really make a difference. Thanks for your help.